This is the second video in the food and digestion series. The first video covered the basics of macro and micronutrients, vitamins and minerals. So when we discuss aspects of carbohydrate, protein, and fat ratios in your diet, or vitamin and mineral supplements, you'll have a basic understanding of those concepts. Let's begin by going over some key terms. The intestinal cell wall has many names, including gut lining, gut mucosa, mucosal barrier. We will mostly use gut mucosa in this video to refer to that area. One term you may or may not be familiar with is microbiome. The microbiome is actually the combined genetic material of microorganisms in a particular environment. The number of genes in all the microbes in our microbiome is about 100 times the number of genes in the human genome. So we actually have considerably more microbial genes in our system than we do human genes. We have microbiomes all over the body, but we will limit this discussion to the gut microbiome. Actually, the correct term when referring to microbes in the gut is microbiota, but for the sake of keeping things simple, we will use both terms in this video. I know for some of you it's a really strange concept to be talking about bacteria as being friendly, because we are in this era of everything being antibacterial. Even though there are some bacteria in the small intestines, a majority of the bacteria we're talking about are located in the large intestines. We would not be able to survive without the microbes in our body, and we are going to take a look to see how that is possible. Let's take the journey to the intestinal cell layer in steps, so you can gain some perspective on where this microscopic cell layer is located. If we look at a cross-section of the small intestines, we see the wall is actually rippled instead of being smooth. This allows for greater surface area for nutrient absorption. As these ripples become smaller and smaller, we refer to them as villi. These villi are surrounded by a single layer of cells with finger-like projections. These cells are the front line of defense between foreign substances that enter the body and our internal environment. As you see, the separation between our internal and external environment is only one cell thick. Even though there are many complex processes going on at this level, let's work on the basic functions and getting an idea of the big picture so we can understand how our internal environment, our external environment, and our lifestyle choices affect the health of our intestinal cell wall. So let's take a look at the anatomy of a healthy gut mucosa. The internal membrane or internal environment is where nutrients arrive to be transferred to different parts of the body. Again, this is separated by a single layer of cells with tight junctions. The mucosal layer is a protective layer of mucus that acts as a front line of defense against foreign substances that try to enter the body. The lumen is the center canal of the intestines where food travels through. We see in the lumen there are many different types of nutrients, good and bad microorganisms, and their waste products. One of those waste products is called LPS, which stands for lipopolysaccharide. This specific waste product can cause many problems if it is able to get past the mucosal lining. We will see later on how this plays a role in many health conditions in the body. When the gut mucosa starts to break down and the tight junctions loosen up, we call this leaky gut. It's called that because that's exactly what happens. The body has lost the ability to maintain a functional mucosal barrier, and foreign substances are able to leak through the gut into our internal environment. You see in this picture that the cells of the intestinal lining start to malfunction, and the mucosal layer of mucus starts to shrink and lose its defensive capabilities. Again, there are very complex processes that go on when this occurs, but to keep it as simple as possible, these foreign substances activate parts of our immune system that then lead to a level of inflammation that can affect many different areas of the body. Let's take a look at the situations that take us from a healthy gut to a leaky gut. The first process to occur is called dysbiosis. Let's break this word down to understand the meaning a little better. Dys is a prefix that means ill or bad. Bio translates into life or living. So for example, the term biology means the study of life. And finally, osis is a suffix that means a condition in the body. So when you put it all together, a dysbiosis is a condition where the life, specifically in the gut, is ill or not functioning properly. So let's look at the factors that occur to lead us to a dysbiosis. First, we have a decrease in the amount of good bacteria. Second, we have low diversity of the good bacteria, meaning not only are the numbers low, but the many different types of good bacteria are also low. We need a large amount of diversity in the good bacteria in order to have a healthy body. So these two conditions, a decrease in the number and types of good bacteria, now allow the bad microorganisms to take over and start to damage the gut mucosal lining. This process starts with the disruption of the mucus in the mucosal layer. Once this happens, the immune system starts to get involved, leading to further disruption of the cells of the mucosal layer. Essentially, what we have happening is different substances that are not meant to pass through the mucosal layer are now leaking through. One of those substances, LPS, which we spoke about earlier, is a waste product from a certain type of bacteria. There has been quite a bit of research conducted on the effects of LPS when it is able to leak past the intestinal lining into our internal environment. Here's a list of the conditions that have a link to LPS in our system. As you may notice, the list may seem quite diverse in the types of conditions, but they all have a common beginning with dysfunction in the gut mucosa. It is critical for us to address this dysfunction in the gut lining to either begin or continue the healing process for these conditions. So the next logical step is what causes dysbiosis. We see time and time again one of the major key factors is stress. Now, the details of the complex processes that occur for stress to affect our microbiome and gut lining is a bit beyond the scope of this video, but to understand that all different forms of stress can have devastating effects on our gut health is the important concept to learn. Let's take a look at the different types of stress that can affect the body. Stress is usually thought of as mental or emotional overload experienced when you had a hard day at work or many of the other situations we deal with in life. But stress is much more than that and comes in many different forms. We can experience physical types of stress. For example, a certain workout in a gym will just be the right amount of stress for an individual to build a bigger body, but for somebody else could send them to the hospital with a torn muscle. There is chemical stress from toxins in the environment and even poor food choices. Certain foods can be very healthy for one individual and cause severe digestive issues for someone else. There's thermal stress from temperatures that are either too hot or too cold. There's electromagnetic stress from the electronic devices all around us. And even the sun gives off electromagnetic radiation that can be either good or bad for us depending on the amount. As we mentioned before, the mental emotional stress we experience from a bad work environment, a bad relationship, or just an unhappy life in general. So as we see, different stressors can be good or bad depending on the amount and how the individual perceives the stress. Even though these stressors are from different categories, the body reacts to them with the same type of hormone response. So when the stress is too high, this hormone response leads to a number of reactions in the body that affect the well-being of our good gut bacteria. As we saw before, once you decrease the numbers and diversity of the good bacteria, this leads to a dysbiosis, then breakdown of the gut mucosa, and ultimately leads to disease in the body. So investigating and addressing all the stressors an individual is experiencing is the foundation of managing the root causes of the disease process. For example, if an individual is eating the healthiest food possible but not managing their stressful work environment, that food will help their body to a certain level, but will probably not be enough to counterbalance the mental stress they are experiencing. So again, it's the stress reduction in all aspects of your life that can lead to a better level of health. This process can take time and certain levels of patience, but every step taken in that direction supports the health of your microbiome and ultimately your well-being. To give you an idea of what that journey looks like, let's take a look at some of the key areas we address to lower the stress levels. First, your diet. I'm not talking about the calorie restriction diets we are familiar with, but instead all the food and nutrients that enter our system. Your diet needs to be specific to your needs and may also include supplements to support any deficiencies. So there's no one diet that fits everybody's needs. Second, your sleep patterns to make sure you are getting enough rest and recovery at the proper times. Third is movement and exercise. Now, there are a lot of people that get stressed even when they bring up the word exercise. But again, it is very important to match your activity level with your specific needs. It is also important that you have a certain level of activity in your life, but if being in a gym doesn't work for you, there are certainly a lot of other activities you can do. Finally, we take a look at all the environmental factors that can be causing stress in your life. work environment, home life, the relationships throughout your life, toxins you're exposed to, and their tolerance levels you have for different stressors. We also want to boost the positive things that motivate you and give you a purpose in life. I keep repeating this because it is so important that all these areas of stress are addressed to make a difference in your overall well-being. In order to have a priority of stressors to address first, we have a thorough investigative process that begins with a detailed medical history, lifestyle questionnaires, and specific lab tests that examine different processes in the body to give us a starting point. This is just a starting point, and the priorities can and usually change based on how someone responds to the changes in the stressors in their life. Everybody responds differently, so the program needs to be able to change with them. This change is part of the big picture and is always a welcome part of the program. This is just a glimpse at the way our overall health can be affected by stress. For anyone that is interested in digging deeper into the gut microbiome and digestive health, the full version of the reference research papers can be found at satanahealth.com on the Research submenu under the Learning tab. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you have any additional questions.